Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on another Inktober piece. This one's from day 12. It's actually still one of my favorites. I'm really excited to talk a bit about the themes and the elements that I put into this piece, but I did want to give a really quick announcement about the Kickstarter for my Inktober book this year. So if you don't know, I like to compile all of my Inktober pieces into one book, and I've done that over the last 2 years. So this year, the book is going to be called Nocturne, and hopefully if all goes well, the Kickstarter will be launching next Wednesday, October 23rd. So if you're interested in supporting that, which would mean the world to me, but that will be going live, hopefully, on the 23rd next week. So stay tuned for that. This year, there's going to be a lot of extra art things that you can get in the different tiers, from special edition prints that are only available through the Kickstarter, and enamel pins and stickers and originals at a nice price, a Kickstarter price. So yeah, stay tuned if you want that. The original tier from last year sold out really quickly, so if you're interested in that, you might want to stay on top of it, of making sure that you check it out the first day it's live. But anyways, let's jump right into this piece and this painting. Okay, so like I said, this is still one of my favorites. I tried to be really careful with the way that I drew his face so that it had the right kind of pull of the muscles of how he's looking up and the expression that I wanted and everything. So it took a lot of time to find all the right references of faces to make sure that it did have the kind of gesture that I wanted and the emotion in the face that I wanted. So for that, I'm really happy that I was able to eventually find what I needed. That can sometimes feel like a wild goose chase where I can't quite find exactly what I need. And this one, just eventually it worked out between a few different references. I was really happy with that, being able to get something that has almost this serene face to it, but still has tension in the way that the head is tilted back, and the tension in the muscles in the neck. And I love being able to find different opposing elements to put into a piece. So finding that kind of an energy was something that I really wanted to have in this piece. It was really important to get the expression right, especially since it is pretty much a portrait. It's just his face mostly, with a few other elements thrown in there. So I needed to make sure that that was really right from the very beginning. So I wanted to approach the focal point for this piece a little bit differently than what I normally do. I usually want to focus the focal point onto the character's face, and specifically their eyes. So that's where I like to have the most contrast in the values, and I like to have the elements that are elsewhere in the piece all guiding the eye back into the face and the eyes. And I actually decided that for this one, I wanted to have the focal point be at a different point. I wanted it to be the butterfly and the moon above the character, almost like both the viewer and the character in the piece are both transfixed by that same point. And actually, I think I really like how it ends up turning out. So I chose to have the most contrast between the butterfly and the moon behind it. So it's basically black and white. So it's very stark and sharp, and it has, again, the most contrast in the values. So that really helps guide the eye up there. That's the most attention grabbing. And then I have the second darkest value as the sky behind the moon, and that all just keeps that above water area very sharp and attention grabbing. So I really do actually like this a lot, like I said, because it does help give a little bit more intentionality to, I think, the character, and a little bit more information. I wanted him to feel like he was fading away and sinking in the water and disappearing almost. And I wanted, as the viewer, to be able to see that as well through the piece. So he has very, very similar values to the water behind him. So in a way, he's really grouped together, like he is almost just fading into the water and becoming part of it. And I've been really wanting to create pieces that have more emotion to them and more connection to the emotion of what the characters might feel, so that the viewer can pick up on that a little bit more and maybe connect to some of those emotions as well. So I think that maybe that's one of the reasons why this piece still feels like a favorite of mine from Inktober, because I think in some ways I was able to figure out at least an approach to figuring that out, to getting a little bit better at portraying an emotion that I wanted, and actually feeling like, for the most part, it does say what I'd like it to say. Of course, with art, it's so subjective that anyone else looking at it could see something else in it, and I love that about art. So it's completely okay if when you look at this you don't pick up on that, or it reads as something else, or you get a different message from it, because I think that's really what makes art such an incredible experience, whether you're making it or viewing it, is that it can be something that becomes so personalized. So yeah, that's what I wanted to feel with this piece, and if it means that someone else feels something else or feels even the same way, it's a pretty exciting hope that I have, I guess, for the piece, that I hope that it'll be able to carry that. So I guess I want to talk a bit about maybe the elements and the themes and the motifs that I have in the pieces. So I've mentioned before that I'm basically breaking up the Inktober project into 3 sections. They're still one project, but I wanted it to be where you're getting deeper into the night and also traveling through this new land, and each section takes you deeper and deeper into it. So each section has some elements that are uniquely its own, and then there's certain elements that follow throughout the entire Inktober project so that it links them all together. So for the very first section, I have a lot of water and ocean pieces and elements in them because I want it to feel like the characters are arriving at this new land through the ocean. So that's the introductory way of getting there. So this piece has the character arriving, or at least being in the ocean near it, and I loved being able to explore more water elements. It's absolutely something that I'd like to get a lot more practice in, because there's just such a complex way of breaking down the way that water looks, and I would love to be able to have a better understanding of that so that I can portray it better in the future. But also more elements that I have that are continued throughout the entirety of my Inktober pieces are the butterflies. Actually, that's one of the main ones. I want them to have a certain meaning and feeling, and this is another one where I really would like it to be something that different viewers, when you look at it, you see them representing something that's unique to how you view it, but I did want them to feel almost like these little tag-alongs to these characters as they're finding this place and they're exploring it and they're becoming part of that world. These butterflies start to congregate around them and be attached to them in a way, and be almost like these little travelers with those characters. So I wanted this piece to almost be like he's arriving here and this first butterfly finds him, and they're kind of having this connection. So a few other elements that show up throughout the piece are moons, which should be obvious since it's night themed, but I wanted the moon to have different forms throughout the whole Inktober project. So there's lots of crescent moons and full moons and just different ways of how they are sized relative to the characters and all sorts of things. But I did want that to be a very common reoccurrence in most of the pieces. I also have spikes that are like stabbing and protruding through the characters, and that one's not in this piece, but it is in quite a few of them, and that's one that shows up throughout. Like I said, it has kind of its own meaning to me, but I don't think I'll talk much about that. I think I'll just leave that open to interpretation. But yeah, there's also a lot of like little ties that are like tied on trees or tied on characters. That is also in this one. And that's something that I like to do in a lot of my pieces anyways, so that one doesn't really have much more depth or meaning to it beyond just this connecting visual element that goes throughout the piece. I think the main critique that I do have for this piece, and this is something that, like, for the most part I still want it to be this way, but at the beginning, how I talked about below the water, I wanted the character in the background to have a very similar value so that they would group together and the contrast would be up at the butterfly, and that's where the eye would go. And I definitely still stand by that, and I would want it to be that way. But I do think that I should have pushed the value of the water a little bit darker so that there was still contrast there. It's just it would be more subtle than what was above it. So I could have made it darker. I think that it was just, I gauged the value a little bit wrong, and I didn't recalibrate after I did the first wash because I didn't want to ruin the texture that I got down. But with inks, They dry a lot lighter than they go down, which for the most part, I'm mostly comfortable with now. I do a lot of tests to make sure that I have the right value and everything, but sometimes I slip up, and when I create these really textured washes, when you create another wash on top of it, because this one isn't totally waterproof, it can rework that and just muddle the texture and make that disappear. Or if you try to create texture on top of texture, sometimes that can just overlay so that you end up getting a very nondescript kind of a muddled wash rather than a textured wash, if that makes sense. So yes, I wish that I had gone in and gone darker with the very first wash. It could have been textured but darker, and there would have been better contrast. And don't forget that Kickstarter is launching next Wednesday, and it'll have that hardcover book, enamel pins, special edition prints, as well as originals that will be created for the Kickstarter people specifically. So if you want to make sure to catch those, go check out the Kickstarter next Wednesday. And also next Wednesday, I will be releasing a video here of the cover art that I'm doing for Nocturne. So if you'd like to see what's going to be on the cover, then make sure to stay tuned for that. And I also have the original of this piece at my shop now, so if you'd like to check that out, day 12 is up there. There's a link down in the description that'll take you there. And that's about it, so I will see you guys next week with more art Inktober content. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.